Well, hello. Welcome back to the MDetroit podcast.
We are back from a short hiatus, and we are back bigger than ever. We're very excited to be announcing and doing our fourth season of the podcast. We're so excited for you guys to be listening to this. We have a couple of announcements. Dom, why don't you tell us?
Yeah. So one of our big announcements, not big because we have more things on the horizon.
Oh yeah, guys, please stay tuned.
One of the first things is we will now be on all the major streaming platforms as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and also Spotify Podcasts. Woo. And then also this season we will be artistically sponsored by Tylonn J. Sawyer,
who also happens to be this podcast. So yeah, it's gonna be great, and it is great. Please check out his work. It's very, very cool, and you can also check out the rest of his work at his website, which we will have linked below.
So just one more thing on our Facebook, please pay attention because we are always sharing when artists are doing certain things. Because Tylonn, he has some an art.
He has his first. He has an exhibition right now.
An exhibition
at Namdi Gallery, I believe is the name of it. It's
and it's up Midtown until June something.
Yeah, June something. So you'll definitely have time to check it out. And also, like Dom said, we have very, very big news coming up in the horizon the next couple of months. We're very, very, very excited to be announcing it. So please stay tuned for that. And now on to the podcast of this week.
Hey, I'm Dominic Waddles.
And I'm Mark Rosenblatt.
And this is the MDetroit podcast.
MDetroit podcast is an interview-based podcast about the artists, creators, and innovators of Detroit.
All right, so this week's podcast is Tylonn J. Sawyer. Mark, why don't you tell us about Tylonn?
This episode was really, really awesome. We had a great time speaking to Tylonn about his journey from growing up in Detroit and going on to attending New York Academy of Arts, going to London, spending some time there, and then coming back to Detroit and becoming a full-time artist. We talk about his process, how he creates the images that he creates, as well as his influences. And we also talk about the Detroit art scene and many other things.
So without further ado, please enjoy Tylonn J. Sawyer.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the MDetroit podcast.
Hey.
This is season 4, right?
Yes, this is
This is the first episode of season 4, and we have none other than the great Tylonn J. Sawyer. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
So the way that we do the podcast, as everybody knows, is we start with your bio. We read you your bio, and then we have some questions. I will read your bio. Tylonn J. Sawyer is an American multidisciplinary artist, educator, and curator. Trained in the figurative arts-based practices, Sawyer's work juxtaposes themes of identity, both individual and collective, with investigations of race and history in popular culture. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, Sawyer has been included in solo and group exhibitions throughout the United States and abroad, including the Venice Biennale. I believe I'm pronouncing that correct.
Yeah, that's nice.
Venice Biennale, Italy, Texas A&M University in Texas, the Museum of Contemporary Art Detroit, the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, the Detroit Institute of Art, Michigan, Heron Arts, San Francisco, Kravitz Webby Gallery, Rush Arts, and the New York Academy of Art, New York, amongst others. Sawyer holds an MFA in painting from the New York Academy of Art Graduate School of Figurative Art program and a Bachelor of Fine Arts Drawing and Painting from Eastern Michigan University. Sawyer currently lives and works in Detroit, Michigan, USA. So, after hearing your bio, what would you add if you would add anything, and what would you change if you would change anything?
Oh, man. Wow, you opened up with an awesome question. Nice. Man, like, what would I add? I want a few awards in there. Like, I don't know, I would say humble, but at the same time, that's kind of foolish in the art world. You're supposed to brag about the things you've done. And so, like, I mean, I studied, like, for graduate school, I won a fellowship and ended up studying at the Royal Academy of Art in London. So I would add that. I'm a 2019 Kresge Arts Fellow. I would add that. I made a short film that won Best Short Film at the Detroit Free Press Film Festival in 2019. I'd add that. Things that I would change about my bio. Maybe not, I don't know, because I work in academia, you kind of have to use language that is, like of a certain caliber, but sort of like, even though I'm able to write that way and think that way, I know casually, I'm just from Detroit and kind of from the hood. So I still kind of think, but I say civilians, like people who don't make art, that's what I call like the civilian mentality. And so I like to kind of think in both ways, like how would somebody who's experiencing my work think? And so maybe I would use more casual language, but other than that, no, that's it.
Yeah. Sweet.
Good to know. So for the listeners, that don't know much about specific art, explain a little bit about how figurative art ties into your work.
So figurative art, I mean, it's broad in and of itself, but figurative art just means like you're drawing, painting, sculpting, or creating something that reflects the human body. Okay. That's like that's at the bare minimum. That's what it is. If you're drawing stick figures, that's legally figurative art. Right, up to Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, like, and in between there, and then you have things that are a bit more abstract. So if you think about Picasso, right? Like he was doing figurative art, but it was cubism, So, and there's a myriad of ways to, like, figurative art is still very broad. It just involves using the human figure. I'm more of and so naturalist or realist, like kind of focusing on illusionistic, like real anatomy. You can tell who the person is. Not super like expressive with the paint strokes. Like I kind of render a little tight. I try to loosen up, but I don't know. I'm just not that dude. Like when it comes to like the type of art that I create, and I don't know. I paint and draw in a way that is somewhat illusionistic. You can tell what it is. It's representational. But it fall more in that type of canon as opposed to sort of like abstract. So when you hear figurative art, don't just think something that looks hyper realistic. It just needs to be something that is using the human figure. That's all.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. I've always wondered. So we talked with another artist. His name is Anthony Brass, and he talks about his techniques and for the human anatomy. Did you have to go through a lot of that in your studies?
Yeah. In graduate school, like I said, I went to the New York Academy of Art Graduate School of Figurative Art. So it is a school that its specialty is to train the people who come there how to draw, paint, and sculpt the figure realistically. And so you have a myriad of classes depending upon what your discipline is, but everybody has to take like anatomy every single semester.
Wow.
And so you start off with things like it's like figure structure. Then you go into anatomical drawing. Then you go into écorché, and that's like a class where you have to build a human up from the skeleton all the way up to like the deep muscles.
Ooh, wow.
And then like sculpting it. And then you have a class called advanced figure structure, which I think you pick like a body part, and then you have to study it in great detail. And we had to sculpt it. I think I sculpted a foot and like you do that all semester. So it's in addition to just classes that train you how to paint and draw better, and theory classes, which shows you how to expand your mind. There's that kind of like hardcore scientific portion of it. Imagine like in college, it's just your basic studies that you have to take. So if you went to that school, you're gonna have to take these anatomy classes. And it's a really, really worthwhile education because you know, while the time you're taking that, I was really young, and I'm, you know, trying to, it was awesome to learn it. And I'm thinking like, man, I never learned this in undergrad. But then when I became an instructor myself, it was cool to be able to teach anatomy, you know, and teach people who didn't get it when, you know, like in undergrad were places where I knew. And so I was able to expose that to them. And so, yeah, anatomy, big, heavy component to it. And I mean, I've even had to teach it. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I would have never like thought that would be something that would be that you would have to do every single semester. One of the other things that we noticed about your art is that it's very, when you look at it, it immediately catches your attention because it's very like striking. There's a lot of images that you portray that I guess at least for me really captured my attention. And one of those things is like you use very bold colors. They stand out and they catch your attention. So can you talk about that and how you're, you know, why you choose that way, if there's something behind that?
Well, I would say like in terms of the composition, like sort of how they're arranged to kind of make them striking. I tend to take like the compositions from say like class photography. If you ever seen like fraternity photos, like where people are being presented to you, old religious iconography, where it's always like the presentation of Jesus or Mary to you, like in that way. And so if you notice, like the majority of my paintings, they're presented like that. Like there's not really a lot of narrative where people are fighting in the background or there's activity over here. It's always like a central or a couple of central characters being presented to you. And you know, and it's kind of static. So it's like, I'm, if you could imagine in some weird way, these deities all went to a photo shoot and had to sit down. And like, then that's the way, you know, like my work is being presented. And the irony of that is because I do work from photo references. Like if you follow me in my process in studio, I do this. Like we have to set up lights and get costumes and, you know, like cameras overhead, depending upon what it is. And so in a funny way, it is that, you know, like, and so like, that's why it's being presented in that way so that people won't really, I won't say get distracted by other elements of like activity that may go on around a picture, because I do think that's important. And I love art that does that. But I think more in terms of, as opposed to telling a story, sometimes the story comes from seeing something that is an icon, and everything that icon represents can tell you the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just like in terms of like colors, I just had a lot of different teachers who teach you like their style of painting or palettes. Palettes aren't just the thing that you paint on. It's also the set of colors that you use to make paintings with. And so like I had a bunch of different teachers, you know, like kind of teach their technique. And somewhere over the years, I kind of just created a synthesis of that. And so some people, I try to use very muted colors, but my colors still always have, no matter how muted they are, gray, they still kind of have an intensity to them. So, which I think is cool. Color has punch. It attracts people, like when they see bright, bold colors on walls. Yeah. And as an artist, when I walk into a gallery, like that's the thing that gets me. That cloth that's behind you guys, that got me right there. As soon as I looked, I was like, man, look at that. Yeah.
You can thank my mother.
Hey, nice.
One day in the future, if we do any more endeavors, you'll be able to see this wonderful house.
Right on.
But I was gonna say, can we step back, because we would like the audience to know, and just for us, your process of taking those pictures. So, and setting it up, almost like an inside look on that whole process. Like, do you go to a specific space, or do you do it in your house? Do you do it? Yeah.
Usually, when I'm getting ready to make a picture, usually I'm really heavily research based. So like after I've read enough material, or like research the net, or like come to enough of what I would say like the intellectual foundation to what I'm gonna do. That's when I decide to think about like putting a picture together. And usually in my head, I'll have like sometimes it's a clear idea of what I want what the image to look like, and sometimes it's just a general idea. I'll sketch these things out, they might work. And then I'll say, okay, it's time to set up a photo shoot to say what type of image this is gonna be. And so because my work kind of deals, when I say collective and individual identity, I tend to think about this ideal of cloning. So a lot of times I use myself as a model, and I'll just use Photoshop to like duplicate myself and, like take a bunch of different poses and compose them all in the same picture. And then I have a friend, Scheherazade, who's usually the principal woman you'll see like in most of my work. And same thing with her. We'll talk about what the painting's supposed to be, and maybe take like 500 photos to get down to 3 that's going to make this image. And then like the props that you see, like a lot of times you see like flags and other elements in my paintings. That's stuff that I have in the studio. The suits that I wear, like I have that stuff in my studio. And so like, these are just costumes and stuff that I put on, and I put my camera wherever it needs to be to get the composition and the lighting. I've become a pretty decent photographer as a result of having to take pictures from my own paintings. So I'm pretty confident in it now. Like when it's time to like set up an image, like I know exactly like the right settings and stuff to get something to look the way that I want. And then once I do all of that, if it doesn't need like, I don't know, if it's not a composite type of picture where you're like collaging other elements from the net or something in there, I'll just like work out different compositional elements in it. And sometimes the thing that I've created will be better than what I had in my head. Sometimes, I might look at it and say, well, I thought this would look good in my head, but it doesn't look right now that I see it, like how it might look somewhat realistically. And then I might go back to the drawing board. Other times it might work and I'm like, something's missing, and I'll like put it on hold until later I'm able to explain or decide like what element to like change like in that overall picture. So and then once I set all that stuff up, depending, the canvases, I'm kind of, unless it's really big, I don't stretch my canvases anymore. Like I'll buy them. I'm lazy like that, but if it's like a really big canvas, like I'll have to build that and all of that stuff. And then I paint murals. And so like I'm used to painting really big. And so whether it's big or small and things like that, I just kind of jump in. Usually I do like a really detailed drawing on the canvas. And then usually I just start like laying in colors, moving from like darks to light and just tweaking until the painting is done. And then sometimes during the middle of painting something, I might say, you know what, this needs glitter, like over here on this side, or this is going to look good, but it's still going to feel empty. So I might look at other like sort of like historical references. I might can collage on there to kind of like change up the surface and then give it a sort of, give the content of the painting like a different element to it, And so even though I kind of plan out things rigidly, I still kind of have that artistic spirit to where like if something just needs to change right now, it needs to change right now. And I don't, second guess myself on stuff like that. So,
yeah. How long does it usually take for like a painting or a mural?
Well, murals go a lot quicker because usually you're being paid to get them done in a certain amount of time. And usually that time, like if you get 10 days to do a mural, that's like heaven, because mural is like usually in murals, they want them done like within a week.
Wow.
Like give or take. And so there's techniques to get that done quicker. But murals, painting small it's a different set of problems than painting like larger. It's like I can paint a mural faster than I could paint something 20 feet tall quicker than I probably could paint something 6 feet tall, because there's just a different set of problems to that. But like when I do come like approach like things that are bigger, like at this last show that just opened up last week, like I have a few big canvases like in there, and I kind of like approach those sort of like murals, like just being really bold and like going in really quick, and they moved fairly quick. So I know like one painting, it might have taken me a couple of months to get done. This one called White on White. It's like 7 by 14 feet. Wow. And then I have these other 2 paintings that are both 8 by 6 feet, but I got those done in like maybe 2 months because I was getting ready for the show and I had to, like crank, literally like cranking, like get them done. And so it just, and then I have smaller pieces in the show that it took me almost a year or over a year to finish.
Ooh,
and so yeah, like it's sometimes that's just the nature of the craft, for me anyway. Yeah.
I bet your house is full of just everything. Like I
No,
got
I haven't really cleaned my studio.
Okay,
Is
okay.
full of everything. Like, yeah, like the house. No, the house is. Well, now that I have to Zoom teach at home, there's a lot of stuff on this table. But other than that, usually it's pretty clean in here.
Right.
Nice.
Where do you teach now?
OCC.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh.
So going back a little bit, can you talk about getting started to going to Eastern and then getting to the New York Academy and then how you said going to the Royal Academy in London? Can you talk about that journey?
I mean, I guess I've always drawn. Both my parents can draw. And, I just grew up seeing that. While they weren't professional artists and they didn't go into it at all, but it was something that I just saw. And so I don't remember not drawing, like growing up. And maybe in high school, like I wanted to be a comic book artist, but not even that bad. I just liked comic books, and went into it. But when I went into college at Eastern, I was a computer-aided design major, which doesn't really have a lot to do with art per se, but and I just took an art class just to fulfill that art credit that you have to, like when you're in class in college. And I ended up getting an A. And my teacher, he asked me, he's like, "You're not an art major?" It's like, "No." He's like, "You might want to consider this." And so I actually interviewed my teacher for my second drawing class, like this guy, Richard Washington, who became my mentor. And he always tells that story about the nerve of me and my friend Dorian, like for interviewing him. Like, who are we? Like you people to come here and interview me. But then I took took his class, ended up getting an A, and I was just kind of hooked then. And so I just changed majors to art. And just, stuck with it throughout school, like just really learning the craft. Richard Washington, Margaret Davis, they were my mentors while I was at Eastern. And after that, I was getting ready to graduate. And it's like, man, I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life per se, but and thinking like, man, how does somebody make money off of art? But then I thought about how much I loved Richard Washington and Margaret Davis and what they did. And I was like, what does it take to become an art instructor? Well, you have to go to graduate school in these things. So I applied to graduate school, 3 of them, like, bless you, Boston, Indiana, and New York Academy of Art. And I got in all 3 of them, actually. And then so I ended up going, to New York because, I was at Eastern and I was a figurative artist then. But I don't know, I was just okay, I would say, like by the time I graduated. Like really, I would say skill-wise, I wasn't at a place that I wanted to be. And I don't know if I think I was ready to step out and actually just try to be an artist from where my skill set was then, and that's me being honest, taking an honest inventory of where I was at that time. And so when I went to the academy, that was like literally life-changing because the intensity of instruction and the way that you kind of workshop from the time you get there and to the time you leave, like it literally would take your skills from like a 3 to a 10, in just such a short amount of time. Because like I was saying, the things like the anatomy every semester, and then you have like painting 1, painting 2, painting 3, painting 4. It's just so intense that you're just getting this wealth of knowledge all at one time, and then even about your craft. And so like I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to go to that school, Right. And then for my thesis project, like while I was there, we were presenting our thesis project, which was accepted. And then I won a trip to go to the Royal Academy of Art and study while I was there, which really blew my mind. Wow. And so, yeah. So like my last semester there for a few months, like I took off, went to London. And I think it was like an exchange program. So they sent somebody to the States. And I was just in London, like studying and experiencing that stuff. And the weird thing, that was 2003. And so like the United States, how we've been at war in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. So at that time, this is before we went to war. So when I got on the plane to go to London, we weren't at war. And when I got off the plane, it was like everywhere, like the United States has declared war and like we're in Iraq or, and Oof. While I was there at the school, that was like obnoxious because people kept asking me like, what do you think about the war? What do you think about the war? Man, and I'm jet lagged and stuff. And I'm just like, I never could get used to the time change. And I'm like, I just got here. I can't think about it.
It's only my 3rd day out here.
Yeah. Like it was weird. But that was such a good experience, like in London. just like all the museums and the art that I got to see like at that point in time, and just the research I did. And when I came back, I finished my thesis project and graduated. So, but then this is where things get weird, right? Like, so like I graduated, I was still living in, just in New York, kind of like living like people do. But I wasn't really making any art. And so I ended up getting a job, like offered a part-time job at like Eastern for a few classes to teach. And so I moved back to Michigan I was really homesick while I was in New York. Like that whole time I was there, any opportunity I had the chance to come back to Detroit, I did. And so then once I got there, I was teaching, and then I ended up getting a job in a hospital. And then this is kind of what I call like the dark ages in my life, because there was just a period of time for like 8 years where I just kind of was doing corporate America stuff and no art. And so like, it shows, it's like just a gap on my resume of like production and stuff like that. And that's how I understand like how people, like who try to do the responsible thing and get into this corporate life may give up on their dreams because they get into a routine and they get about the money and they forget, about doing stuff. And that was me for a bit. It was, like I can be very frank about that. But then in like 2011, I was laid off from my cushy job, which sucked. And I was really depressed. But in that depression, I didn't have anything to do but look for a job and paint. And so that's what I did. And I ended up just creating enough paintings. And then Dave at Cass Cafe, you guys familiar with that place?
Yeah.
He offered me a show, like a 2-man show with this artist, famous artist, Safel Gardner, really famous abstract artist. Why are you looking crazy? Safel? What's up?
That was your art.
Where?
When I first got to Wayne, I believe your stuff was your paintings were up.
That's so crazy.
I like when I first got to Wayne State, and I was like, Cass Cafe, what's Cass Cafe? So we went, got the chicken fingers, and I believe your art was up. That is really good connections.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like Safel did abstraction. I did these like really large portraits of people. And that was weird because I'm from Detroit. This was the first time I was ever showing in Detroit too. Okay. And I was so I was out of the loop. I didn't know anybody in the art world or anything like that. And then we had this first show, at Cass Cafe, man. I was super nervous. And like Safel took me around, showed me to everybody. And it was weird to hear people like coming to like, wait, who are you? Like, you're from Detroit. Where did you come from? And I'm like, where did you go to this school? No. What? Like it was the weirdest thing, because it was like I might as well have been some alien that had came, here, like who? And the interesting thing, like from that show in the top of 2012, I think I sold everything except like 3 paintings.
Wow.
And then literally, and I was telling a friend last night, literally since that show, I have not been showing like in some way, shape, or form. Like I've constantly been working since then. And I was like, man, next year's coming up on my 10-year anniversary, like literally like being like committing to being an artist, because that was the thing. Once I got laid off, I ended up getting a job working for this company called Living Arts. And I was a program manager for other artists, because once that happened, and once I got laid off from the corporate job, I was very clear that I wasn't going to ever do anything else that I was going to be unhappy with. And I wasn't going to do anything that wasn't art related, because it's like, this is my passion. This is what I wanted to do. And you're going to commit to this no matter how hard, you have to work. And I worked really, really hard to make it. I still have to work really, really hard to, to even keep it going. But I do, every people say, be proud of yourself about a thing. I'm very proud of that. Like that I am the architect of the path, like the path that I have, I've been following. And so, yeah. Sorry, that was a long story. You asked for
that
it,
was
though.
perfect, because we want those stories.
Yeah, man.
Like usually, we listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of interviews, and we want those juicy stories. And it doesn't. You can't get it out of somebody unless they want to tell it. So I'm really glad that you told it.
And the other thing is that like we kind of like look to our mentors, and we're like, man, like you were like us. What? We just kind of like look up to. I mean, even you're like, for us, you're an inspiration, because like we get to see this and we're like, man, he's so established, and like people know him and everything, and he got all all of these connections, he does galleries, he's always working. And then like it's crazy that you came to Detroit and you just said like you're like, man, I was like an alien. So that's a really interesting thing that I feel like not a lot of people would know unless they had this opportunity to listen to you talk about it, or maybe on here.
And now you're a role model.
And thank you.
And a good thing at that, you're a black role model. We need more black role models.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Doing some more. I'm sorry. You do a lot of solo exhibitions, and I know you already talked about your Cast Cafe presentations. But what have you learned through that process of doing your solo exhibition?
Well, solo exhibition. How many have I had? 1, 2. I've only had 3. No, I've had 4 solo exhibitions. This is my 4th.
You can also talk about like
up.
group exhibitions in general.
Yeah, I've been in tons of group exhibitions, solo exhibitions. Because like I said, just within 10 years, that's pretty okay. Solo exhibitions, what can I say there? Like a group exhibition is kind of like you're being asked to contribute a song to a soundtrack, right? A solo exhibition is your solo album that is supposed to be about your voice and whatever the theme is. And so that's the best way to think about that. At least the way that I approach it, and the way, like I always kind of compare art and music back and forth because I see a lot of similarities into the way that things go down. For group shows, usually that involves a curator curators are people who usually organize shows around a certain theme. And so if the show is called something to do with water and they wanted to talk, whatever it was thematically, the work had to do with water. So they might research a variety of different artists and see whose work deals with water. It could literally be paintings of water. It could literally be a sculpture that somehow uses water. It could be something that doesn't even have water, but it's just the title might have water in it. It could be about slaves who jumped off of the ship into the water. You know what I mean? Right, and so they would put together like work that visually and conceptually like match that theme. And so when you have group exhibitions, either they're like that or they're calls where it's like a contest where you might pay like $20 or $30 as an entry fee, send in slides of your work, and then there's a juror who decides what work goes into the show. And then you can, you can get your work in there. And so like I've done a couple of those. Solo shows, I'm the curator, in a way. So my galleries may come through and like talk about like pieces that work best, like out of all the things that I have done. But for the most part, like you become the curator like of that particular experience. And so I'd say depending upon how much control a musician has like of their project. But like I said, like where if you're painting something, like you're hopefully you're not making things that all mean something so completely different that the show doesn't work cohesively. But galleries usually will keep you on track. If they come in and like everything is completely different, they're like, what are you doing? Or something like that, but because shows are supposed to look cohesive. Like you should be able to go to an art show and tell the same artist did everything like in that room. But at the same time, you still want to have some variety around the things that are in there. Like my teacher, Richard Washington, he said too much of one thing is not enough. And so you don't want like a whole gallery of paintings that all look exactly the same. And so you want to have some variety in there, but that it should all be able to fit under, like the same umbrella or the same concept. And so group shows are easy, 1 or 2 pieces you can sit in or whatever, but solo shows, man, that's where the work comes in because you just have to produce a lot to fill a space,
right.
And make it work and make,
Oof, imagine filling a whole hall.
It's like that's literally like writing an album, just like you said, which is a really interesting thing because now I'm inspired to like, if I'm gonna work on an album, I got to go see some like art exhibits or something like that, like some solo shows. That's something that I can definitely say that I haven't done enough of. I think it's I think it's a weird thing, because for me at least, I haven't, I really want to go out more and see more art shows and exhibitions and people's personal stuff. But how would you recommend somebody who doesn't know as much about not doesn't know as much about art, but like if they go to see somebody's work, like how would you recommend they go about doing that? Like how would you recommend like for them to have like the best experience? What would you recommend for somebody?
Let's approach this as if we weren't in a pandemic. You
Yeah,
know?
right.
You know, like that is one thing. I think what is a website? Is it called Detroit Art Walk or Detroit Gallery Crawl.com or something like that? And so you can find like all these different galleries and stuff to go to. It's challenging to say like how you would experience it, because I'm of the mindset that you should experience as much art as possible. You know, like don't get me wrong, I make a particular type of art. I like what I like. You know, I don't care what anybody else's opinion is about something. I like what I like. I don't like what I don't like. You know, that's just how I am about things. But when it comes to art, I feel everybody should be their authentic selves, and I love the variety in art. So I feel you should go to shows that have scribbles and lowbrow art. I feel you should go to like uppity museum shows where you might have to put on a tuxedo. I mean, everything in between. I mean, like everything in between, because even though I know that I do a type of fine art that fits in a certain category, I love the experience that I'm cool with artists who do a variety of different type of work. And I don't see one as being better than the other, or one being highbrow or lowbrow. It's all art. It's just that, just like, once again, just like music, certain genres appeal to certain audiences, you know, and just like music, I have a varied taste in the type of music I like. And same thing with art. You know, like I don't say like I just like figurative art, even though I'm a figurative artist. I love Mark Bradford. Like he's an abstract painter, and like, period. Like I just love his work. Like just standing in front of one for like hours, you know, like that type of thing. Like I like what I like. And so I would say maybe one cool thing too, like you guys being young, most art shows have like wine and little cheese and hors d'oeuvres and stuff. Yeah. So like you can like go out hanging and hit up different galleries and almost have like a bar crawl, but it's like art. Yes, you know, it's just like cool. You get some culture, you can get some drinks, you know, like it's the best.
Yeah.
You like, and some cheese. I don't know if you're 21 or not. I don't want to condone underage drinking.
We're
I'm 21. I turned it in the pandemic.
Okay, congrats. Okay. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. I celebrated it in my house.
Right. Yeah.
As you should during a pandemic.
Yeah. Imagine going to art galleries and be like, "Hey man, they had chicken."
That would be something.
Absolutely.
That 107 Mile they had.
Oh my gosh.
They had crackers.
Oh man. Can you talk a little bit about your influences and how you incorporate your influences, if you do, into your work?
Well, like my influences, like once again, like a variety of different sources, not just visual artists, like contemporary artists who like are live, who like I'm really influenced by. This painter, Vincent Desiderio, local painter, Robert Sheffman, Kara Walker, really famous artist, Jenny Saville, and my teachers from the academy, like a lot of them in terms of just the type of work that they do. But then like people who aren't alive anymore, you know, like Velasquez, like really, really love his work, Caravaggio. And I just find myself like really heavily influenced by like a lot of the sort of religious work they did in the presentation of it. That's where like you can really see that influence in like my compositions and stuff. But then I'd say that's more just like influence in terms of the craft of what I do. But then like the intellectual framework for like what I do, like James Baldwin, this writer, Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club.
Yep.
Like I love how subversive his writing is. Neil Gaiman. Margaret Atwood. I mean, I'm really big into like fiction and history. So just literally, like, you'd be surprised like how many just like weird like history articles like I'm just nerding out like reading, because I'm always really fascinated as to where we are right now and how we got here. And then you find something where like this exact thing happened like 80 years ago and they haven't gotten it right yet, and these things will be surprises. And so like the just literally like history is such a big influence in that way, because it's not even that it's an obsession. It's just me trying to open my eyes to see like a bigger picture of like who we are as a society,
Right.
and this people. And I don't know if conceptually to think of ways like, well, how can we solve this one problem here? Because it's so complicated, There's no one way to say like, oh, well, the problem is the problem. There's like millions of problems,
So many problems.
So like, yeah. So like, what can you get done? But like all of the Fran Lebowitz too, like another writer who like influences me. But like these, I don't know, they all just kind of blend together into this culmination that is me, and then just like my experiences, and that's kind of how my work manifests.
Yeah.
Like usually even one painting, usually it probably took 10 to 15 different sources just to come up with that one image, So
Yeah. You were talking about learning history for the sake of learning, like how we got to the place that where we are. Recently there's this book that came out by this Israeli author. His name is Yuval Noah Harari, called Sapiens, and it literally talks about that. So if you haven't checked
I've read all his books.
Wow.
Sapiens and Homo Deus and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century.
Yeah. That writing is just, man, hits you right. You're just like, wow, this is a really interesting perspective. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I've become a history buff. I used to not like history.
Yeah.
Just because of high school, but now that history has become like a part of my life, I'm taking a Byzantine civilization class at Wayne State.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I just want to tell these stories. I just want to tell these stories through music. And I can see that in your work too. And I'm just really glad that somebody else is doing that. So I get to look up to somebody that's doing it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Talking about Detroit, since we're the MDetroit podcast, the Detroit art scene thoughts. What are your thoughts on the scene?
Independent of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because, it's killed everything. I mean, I love the Detroit art scene. I don't know, I mean, occasionally you might find somebody who has a sort of elitist mentality, but that's such a rarity. Like, I love how connected and how cohesive it seems to be in the support that you'll find, like, from somebody. Like, when you asked about the shows, I'm like, man, go to as many different types of shows as you can. Like, that's what I'll do. And you go there and you'll see the same people, like I said, at the Rich Snobby Art Gallery to down to, this is somebody's having a show in the garage over on 3rd, and like, let's go check it out. Let's go do this, and you see that. And that's what Detroit is like, and we're a big, small city, like in that way, like there's tons of artists, and more so than the competitiveness that I've seen in like the music industry in Detroit, like the art scenes, like people like get really excited whenever you see somebody do something or do good. Like, oh man, Sydney's got a show coming up. Oh man, Taurus has got a show. Like it's this really, really cool, like exciting thing. And I mean, I've only lived in New York. New York is too big to say what the art scene is like there, because it's New York. There's multi-layered art scenes, but like here, there's a beauty in that, like to me, like that type of connectiveness that you have. And from like young artists to old artists. And then like myself, my friend Sydney, Rashawn, and Scheherazade, like we're Artist Collective, the Vanguard Artist Collective. And one of the things that we try to do is kind of keep like a connection between like intergenerational, between like younger people and then like people who are like even above us. Because one thing we talked about, like, I went to Island Park, so like I was kind of like separated from this, but like Sid, we kind of talked about like growing up and being artists. And then when we got in our 20s, we didn't really like have mentors or like a lineage to really connect to, like in that way. Like it was sort of like we were just kind of left out there. And so one of the things now, like being like where we are now, like we try to make sure that there's that connection. So if there's like, like I mentor, like people at like Wayne State or CCS or even at OCC, or, who don't even go to school, but they're just people who are like creatives, and, like help them out, give them whatever advice I can, or like resources, to help them achieve the goals that they want, like if they're doing the work. And like, I don't know, I think that's really, really important, so that, like you're trying to, that type of connection is sort of like the fabric of what helps hold that art, like this artist community together, and everybody does it. And it's like just really, really wonderful. So like I said, the art scene in Detroit, I love it. Like, it's really, really awesome.
Yeah. How has Detroit impacted your life?
How has Detroit impacted my life? Well, I don't know, being kind of, like born and raised here to a certain degree. But I mean, I love it. It's a blue collar town for the most part, like it's pretty eclectic. Only ever lived in New York, I would say, like from here, New York, Ipsy, but that was away at school when I was at school at Eastern. And England, that was a few months. But one thing I would say, like, in terms of a Detroit spirit, maybe it's that sort of like blue collar, like mentality, like we'll do the work, and so like I've gone to like other places and it's never been like above me to like do the work, like to do whatever it took to get to where I needed to go, or, like to accomplish this particular goal. I don't know, I'm just used to doing that. And then too, being what I would say, like a sense of like what it's like to be Black, and think about like the proudness of that. I've heard some people talk about like their insecurities of like their Blackness, or I don't know, I may be feeling less than because of that. And I don't know if it's to do with like how I was raised, or just literally the environment I lived in. But like Detroit's 80-something% Black. Like this was like Wakanda to me. And so like I've never not seen Black excellence. And so like how else could I not have a sense of, like that type of like greatness, or like I've never thought of myself as less than or anything like that, because I've grown up in an environment where I've seen both the best and the worst of us, but that's in any place, that's in any society. And like I'm a product of my environment, and Detroit was an awesome environment to like forge you, into the adult that I am now, and forge me into the adult that I am now. So yeah, man, putting in the work, that sense of community, and then just the history of like the Black excellence that comes from this city. Like that's, yeah. I've had somebody even tell me, like, people from Detroit, like, man, y'all act like y'all better, what do you mean? Like, yeah, you could tell, like people from Detroit, like, y'all don't have that type of oppression. Like somebody was like, oh, what do you mean? Like, yeah, like, what is that supposed to mean?
Yeah.
Do you want to say oppressed?
I don't know, man. I don't know what that means, but hey, I love Detroit. So
it's funny. We had one of our earliest podcast, and like one of our dearest friends is a drummer, and he was like, yeah, man, like I'll play in Detroit and then I'll go to like New York and play in like a club or something, like at a jam session, and then they'll be like, man, you have the Detroit sound, or something like that. And it's something I feel like that transcends not only music but also like into other aspects, because you did mention the part about like putting in the work and then like having all these like connections and stuff like that. And that's like a common theme we found, especially in the music as well, because there are these mentor figures that are like, we want to give back to the community, and we also want to make sure you're like working really hard, because that's what we did. So we are amidst a pandemic. The vaccine is starting to roll out, but it's
the good
still
old Pandarosa.
But but it is still at large. How has your pandemic situation been?
Man, how was the pandemic situation? It was really hard in the beginning. Like there's still some challenges. I'm I wouldn't say extroverted, but I'm kind of an extroverted person. Like I constantly go out, like I would travel a lot. Even in terms of being an artist, it's those types of experiences that keeps my imagination vivid, like going to see other places, going to shows. Like if there's an art show in LA, like I'll fly to LA for a couple of days to actually be right before they shut everything down.
Wow.
I was in LA, like going and trying to check out art shows and stuff like that. And so, that's been a really, really challenging thing for me. Like going to art shows, concerts, like there's everything like influences me, like just those types of experiences. And without that, like it's almost like not having the gasoline to get the car going, or like in that way. But like I said, I do the work, so I still push through it. But like it's just a bit more challenging, because there are those experiences to like fuel that type of imagination. Let me see. I've gotten really, really used to working out at home more so. I've gone to the gym a few times, but the pandemic kind of anxiety still is kind of like with me, like being in those sort of spaces. But things are opening up slowly. I mean, we live in a big house. This has been fine. I have like a couple of friends who we all social distance really tough in the beginning. And so like you kind of just have that small niche group of people you may see like occasionally. And I like they're really responsible not to expand that because I don't want the coronavirus
I don't
at all.
Me either.
Yeah. So like that. But last year, I mean, the solo show that opened up last week, I got all that stuff painted throughout the year. And so I will laugh because I'm like, I didn't have any place to go. So there was no excuse not to get work done, like, well, as hard as it was to kind of create without, like I said, that fuel that comes from like the experiences. But, like it definitely kind of created like that time to get like a large body of work done, like I wouldn't say a year is a good amount of time to get a large body of work done. Let's see what else. Lots of walks around my neighborhood. Got to see that. And I was like, man, my neighborhood's pretty. I need to do, so that was cool. Like last summer, just constantly doing that. I actually did it last week too. Like kind of went for some walks. And then Michigan weather stopped that really quickly. Like again.
Stops it on the dime.
As per usual.
Overnight.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I guess I'm doing okay, man. Like into it. I'll still, whatever the new normal is going to be, which I hope it isn't this, I'll be excited when we get to that,
Yeah.
So,
yes.
How you guys doing during this pandemic?
We started this podcast. We started this podcast.
Well, okay.
It was crazy because what was it, right before, right? It was right before the pandemic, hit.
Yeah.
He had the idea, and I'm just like, yo, we got to do this. And then we started like trying to figure stuff out. We had no idea what we were doing and stuff like that. We sat like for like a time. We would just sit around, and just be like, "Oh, we should do this. Oh, we should do this." And then the pandemic's like, "Nope, you have to do it this one way." So we've done a few socially distanced podcasts, and like trying to just make sure everybody's like okay and comfortable with it. Keep it super low key. Yeah. But yeah, man, I feel like it's kind of like that weird time thing where like when you're in the midst of it all, it seems like it's taking forever, and it's crazy because it's already March of 2021, and I'm like, what happened in 2020? Right. That was so fast.
I don't know.
No, I don't agree. 2020, man, it felt like it was 1,000 years long to me.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Like amidst the time, it was it seemed like a really long time.
I don't know. I feel like the summer, for me, it went pretty smooth because so when the pandemic, I work at Gordon Food Service, and work didn't stop because everyone needs food, so we were considered essential workers. So I was going and working, and I was just clocking in dough. I mean, we had the hazard pay, so I was like, okay, this is good. As soon as everybody opened up, they're like, nah, you can't work those hours anymore. I was like, dang. So everything was just like, but yeah, we started the podcast in March. We had plans to do it down at Wayne in the studio. I had and that got canceled. So our first podcast, they had mics. It was Mark, and we have our engineer. His name's Rob Kokacek.
Mhm.
And I had my gaming headset. So I was just like, I think this would be fine.
Yeah.
Of course, I was like, how's my mic sound? How's my mic sound? It's like, it's fine. I was just like, it's not fine. You guys have studio microphones.
I had I had a very like cheap mic. Our engineer has some like better gear because that's kind of like his thing.
So I was like, I'm going to go buy a mic then.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let me set aside some money. So I bought a mic. And they're like, oh man, that's a really good mic. I was just like, yeah. Yeah. I'm not the old gamer headset anymore, but we're doing good. We haven't gotten the chance to celebrate like the podcast.
Yeah, just been
and
like,
we've
Oh,
been
man.
we actually tried to go to a bar. And
keep it, like,
it
low
did
key.
not go well.
Oh my
Apparently,
gosh.
so all bars close at 10.
Yeah.
And then they stopped sitting at 9. So we didn't know that. So we're just walking around Ann Arbor. No, not Ann Arbor.
Ferndale?
Ferndale.
Yeah, Ferndale.
Ferndale. And we're like, can you guys see this? No.
Can you put us in like a corner
Right.
away from everybody else?
You can give us the scraps. Just let us sit.
No.
Right.
It didn't
No.
happen.
But we're doing good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
But
Hey, no problem.
kind of moving on to some educational things. What are some methods that you would give for a growing artist?
Method.
Like
Can you be more specific? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you be more specific?
What are some tips and tricks? So for an artist that is starting out, let's say they've been drawing for about a year, but they want to start to get serious. What are some good tips and tricks that you can apply for somebody that's going into figurative art?
Like if they wanted to be like a working artist, so like
Yes,
show and gallery
yes.
sort of thing.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're gonna assume that they have the skill set, like
Yes.
to do.
They have
that.
the drive in their mind.
Yeah. No. Well, drive is one thing.
Right.
Actually, I mean, drive is one thing.
Sure,
Talent is another.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they kind of
Yeah.
kind of need them to intent. That's why I said I'm gonna assume that they have the talent,
Right,
and,
right,
and the drive, like to do this. I find, especially like younger artists, it starts. One of the biggest challenges is them determining what it is they want to create,
Mhm.
and what to create consistently. Because once you start making art, you have to make something that you love. Otherwise, or you have that you're deeply interested in.
Yes.
Otherwise, you just won't make it. You won't. Like you have to be interested in that thing. And so, I've had young people ask me this question: what should I do to start off? Like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, what are you interested in? And they say, I don't know. And I'm like, if you can't tell me what you're interested, like, I can't help you beyond that, you know? And so find out what you're interested in.
You gotta help
that's
me.
for one.
Help.
And,
Yeah.
and you know, and don't get me wrong, school, that's why school kind of like helps you out, like in that
Mhm.
refrain, because students get projects and things like that, which create problems that challenge them to solve them in ways. And sometimes within solving those problems, they determine the thing that interests them and what they want to just create and use to that with. So that's one, you know, so school or mentorship could help out with that.
Mhm.
So usually I would say, find out something that you're interested in. And then what do you like? What do you want to say? What do you want to talk about? Like, what do you know? So like my work, like identity has always been in some way, shape, or form what my work is about. Even when I was doing large scale portraits of people of color, it still was like those were about creating beautiful images of Black people to counter the narratives that the media often
Mhm.
portrayed about us. So it's still about identity. So like now I'm using masks where people are adopting the identities of famous archetypes, like people who represent certain things. So like Martin Luther King representing sort of like passive resistance, Malcolm X representing a sort of aggressive sort of like resistance. If it's
Right.
Nina Simone, you're talking about sort of virtuosity in terms of like piano playing, but also think about her personality and like how hardcore she was, you know, like in a fierce advocate.
Mhm.
So it's still dealing with identity just from a different aspect. So like in that respect, I've kind of found the thing that interests me, right? And then history. So like within that identity, what context do you put that in? What are you drawing from, like historically? when I find out something that 400 years ago is still happening, I like to make work that shows that and juxtaposes these images, like that this thing that is happening here is just as is poignant and just as significant as this thing that happened then. And so, like history, identity, and then like pop culture. Like I just did this kind of like hip hop influence series, and stuff, and like kind of connected it to it. And like even now I'm doing like some of the masks with these sort of like hip hop and inspired images. Like you'll see they're coming up in a few, but like in that regard, pulling away like pop culture like into it, or like I'll collage different images. I had these 2 paintings called Good Government and Bad Government, which has collage images from pretty much every news story from over the last several years.
Wow.
Like, and most of the images come from the last 2 years, like just crazy, and that's an objective, like sort of presentation of history. And so like no matter how my work changes thus far, those are the things that I'm interested in. And that's why I'm able to keep producing, because right now the things that change, like that's what I talk about, and I just figure out different ways to talk about it. So like younger people trying to get involved in it, figure out what you're interested in. If you want to get with a gallery, make about 10 pieces, right, that all look somewhat cohesive. They shouldn't look exactly the same, but you should definitely be able to tell that they come from the same artist, that they all may talk about the same thing. Like if you write a love song, you can do a whole album of just love songs and talk about different aspects of love, like just in that respect. If you're, a feminist and you want to talk about gender roles in the workplace, how many different ways can you approach that topic, and if it's figuration, like that, just, or abstraction or installation or performance, whatever you do. And people, and I said, just jump and dive in. But what if it's just don't even put the butt on, just start making things that work, and if you get 2 out of 10 that look decent, do 10 more, get 2 more until you get the 10 that work for you. And then present that to a gallery, because if you want to, usually, especially if you want to get a gallery, you need a consistent body of work. When you want to be in a show, it helps that you have a consistent body of work, but sometimes if you're just in the show as a solo artist, if the one piece is good, somebody will put you in there. But if the ideal is to be consistent and to constantly show, it's best that you make bodies of work or like groupings of things, and just stick with it. Like I say, you got to put in the work and do that. After the show at Cass Cafe, and I had sold everything but 3 paintings, I told a friend of mine, I was like, man, I got to paint some more. What a great problem to have, and that's kind of what, then literally that's what I try to keep my problems good, like good problems, like Jesus, like I was stressing out about getting these paintings done. And I was even thinking that, like up at 3 a.m. painting, like, man, what a great reason to be tired, like to be stressed about, right, versus doing TPS reports in an office somewhere, and no shade on that, because there's some people who may love doing TPS reports in offices. I am not that person, Hey, yeah, saying.
What is something that you want to see more of in Detroit?
Something that I want to see more of in Detroit. Man, that's a really good question. Let me.
You can take your time to answer it. Yeah.
I'm like, man, more of like in Detroit. Like, does it even have to be art related? Once again, like we're all under the assumption that there is no global pandemic.
Right, exactly.
Like that sort of thing. Man, I miss like the festivals and stuff that used to be in like New Center and even like downtown. Like they cut a lot of those out.
Yeah.
And I wish that, like they kind of brought those back so that it could kind of connect the city like a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know like now there's like beef in Detroit because, there's the gentrification versus certain people being like black people being displaced, and a myriad of different issues. And because we know the capitalistic society we live in, that's not going to not happen like here. But while it does happen and we try to solve those problems, man, I don't want us beefing like why that happens. And so like I think things like that, like larger cultural events that could bring us together as a city, hopefully could like literally bring us together as a city while we are addressing like those types of issues. And so I just wish, there were more of those sorts of things.
Totally.
That are happening. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I loved it because I remember growing up, my mom would take us to the African World Festival down at the Riverwalk. And when we had found out that it moved to the African World Museum, I was just like, oh, okay, that's really cool. Why do they do that? And my mom was just like, they're charging ridiculous amounts of money to do the Riverwalk nowadays. I was just like, really?
Yeah. Are they still doing, well, they're not doing anything right now. But,
Well, right. I know Denford's still, Denford's just like the jazz festival, so it's in Campus Marshes and it's at the Riverwalk. But I just wonder, what is the pricing on that nowadays to be able to rent the whole Riverwalk and Campus Marshes? Because now that everything has gone up, sure, it's close to $1 million.
I'm sure it's more than that.
Probably more
honestly.
than that, because you're shutting down whole streets. But
right.
Not talking about that. What would you like to see on the podcast, and what would you like us to ask the artists that we get on? So who would you like to see on the podcast, and what would you like us to ask?
Who would I like to see on the podcast? There's tons of artists.
Yeah.
Rashawn Rucker, Sidney G. James, Sheherazade Washington Parrish, Backpack Durden.
She's on the list.
She's on the list.
There's a young man at Wayne State, Miles Rubin, who's a filmmaker, and he made this award-winning film that just came out called Nile like last year, and he's a beast of a dancer. So I think he'd be a really cool, interesting person to have on your podcast. I know he's part of this thing like the brotherhood at Wayne State, like these young black men who are doing great things in the community. And so that's always cool to see. Georgia Namdi, my gallerist, who's probably like the biggest black gallerist in the city. And so it's always nice to get the insight of somebody who's been doing it, for a couple of years. And when I say a couple of years, I'm talking about before all of us were born. Wow. On here. And even his daughter being a woman, like gallerist, like in the art, like in the art world. Jova, who is the curator at large at MoCAD. She's a dope person to have on, her and Maceo. And so to have like these two young people of color who are like curators at large for a major art museum in Detroit, that's really interesting. So
yeah. What would you want to ask them if there would be anything?
I don't know. I'm not an interview question.
It would be kind of more of an interesting, like, I know you probably know them, but what would be like something like, man, I've always wanted to know this.
Or something that you feel like more people should know about that they should be asked about.
So when we talk about things like diversity, right? What diversity and inclusion looks like, maybe ask people like them who've kind of been doing that work for years, like what that looks like and why that is important. It's weird, like what I say, just the latest buzzwords, diversity and inclusion, Lord knows what they will be coming up. But like, I tend to find that Black people kind of been doing that in certain fields forever, like that's the thing, like for the most part, like we've always been about inclusion, not, like separation in that respect. And so what's it like to be somebody who has been doing that work for years, where you highlight, like the images and voices of people of color, while at the same time creating a diverse environment so that it's not just this homogenized way of seeing the world, particularly like in the art world.
Totally.
Yeah.
What is something that you will never forget, that you use constantly, whether it's a quote or a concept or whatever? Could be anything.
Something that I always use. Um, where we're saying like making everything look exactly the same. When I said too much of one thing is not enough. And so it's weird, like even conceptually how I deal with people. Like if something is the same all the time, it'll drive me nuts. Like redundancies are very frustrating to me. If I'm making work and I'm doing something, it starts to look like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. Like I will like, it'll almost be like a system shut down. Like a fails like, wait. We can't do any more of these. Like stop instantly. If you're going out with somebody, let's go to this restaurant, and you're going every single time. Wait a minute, we can't just keep going. Like there are other places in the world.
Yeah,
like I can't just keep doing so. Like like for me, definitely like too much of one thing is not enough. Because like I say, the diversity, like I like my whole life is about that, like the type of music, type of food, the type of movies, the type of books I read, the type of, I make a certain type of art, but the type of art that I experience is like very vast, and because I make a certain type of art, one of the reasons I am never, I never try to like isolate myself from like experiencing or digging like something else, because I do think that diversity is necessary. I think you need abstract artists. I think you need people who do illustration. I do think you need people who do stick figure art and make millions of dollars so that people like me can say, damn it, why can't I make $1 million stick figure art? Like you need like all of that, because that's interesting to me. Like it just is. So yeah, too much of one thing is not enough. Like, give me all of the chaos. Give me all of the crazy stuff. Man.
Yeah.
I love that. But what are some hobbies that you got? What are some things that you do? It could be watching Naruto for 20 hours a day.
Oh my gosh.
Or
we actually did have a guest who
bark.
watched a bunch of Naruto.
Yeah.
Just like killing drummer, but he's like huge Naruto fan.
No, I read a lot when I'm not working on like my fine artsy stuff. Like I draw like cartoons, comic-y, like sorts of things.
Okay.
I used to make music. I don't do that anymore. I used to be a spoken word poet. I do that occasionally when I'm asked to come out and do something. Like I'll still write here and there, but I don't like perform anymore, like unless I'm asked to do it. But I did something on my Instagram, but like other than that, like, yeah, like traveling, like it's in a post like pre-pandemic sort of thing. Like, man, I was always on the go. Like I was always traveling, like, like when I'm not doing that, like that was sort of my thing, Yeah.
I just want to ask something real quick. So as a person that travels a lot, how do you do that financially? Because, like, I look up to, like, a lot of people that are in, like, their 25s to 35s, and they're, like, traveling. And I'm just thinking, like, how do you make this happen? Traveling-wise. Do you drive a lot, or do you
I don't
fly?
Well, I'm with you, man. I don't know how people in their 20s travel like that, because I didn't have, I'm 44 and I'm a full-time college professor.
Oh, you
so like
look
I can
great.
afford a plane ticket, here and there.
Yeah.
But just like anybody, I look for deals on flights and stuff like that. If it's like Chicago or New York, I'll actually drive there. Like if it's like places like in that type of range. But which most of the shows, they are in like New York or like in this area. So like a lot of like literally, especially like before the pandemic, man, I was in New York all the time. Like, I still know people who live there, but definitely like New York was a place where like, it wouldn't be unusual that I visited there several times a year, like for different things. And I had just, like I said, before the pandemic, I just started kind of adding LA kind of like on that list, because they have a lot of cool shows like out there. But yeah, like like one thing too, like about the art world, and I did find myself like doing this, like, you can kind of look on the year out and see like what shows are going to be where. And then you can just kind of like buy like your tickets and stuff like that. Like 2 years ago, me and my significant other, we went to Italy for the Venice Biennial, and like spent 7 days in like there. But that was something planned like a year out, and then just like paying on and stuff. So by the time, like August came, we just went out there and really, really enjoyed it and got to go experience like all these cultural phenomena, like Rome and Pompeii, and then finally ending in Venice. But then, like you get to experience this major worldwide art fair, like all at the same time. The year before that, I was showing in Miami for like Art Basel and Scope. And so like we kind of, that's a year out. And so ironically enough, for those plane tickets, I got because around Christmas time, the airlines would give you like great deals. So I ended up getting like a plane round trip ticket to Miami for like $100,
wow.
to go do that. And so, yeah, it's, you look, but I'm with you, man. When I was in my 20s, no, like I just could not. No.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite hotels you go to in New York, or do you stay with somebody?
There's a little hotel in it's called the Broadway, and it's on like 54th Street or something like there in like New York.
Okay.
I mean, it's little. It's just like a quick, if you're only going to be there for like 2 days sort of thing. But like, but it's like in Times Square and it's cool. Yeah. I'm not, because I used to live in New York. After like a few hours of being there, it no longer feels like I'm on a vacation or any place like that. Like it's still, well, actually, no, I will say that now, like since I moved back in 2004, the longer I stay away from it, New York changes to the point where it can have a newness to it, but that's just started happening. It's still like after a while, like if I go there, it's just like, yep, this is New York, and it kind of like loses that New York vibe to me because I live there and I still have that feeling like that, so.
Totally.
Feel that.
So we're going to go to our signature section. We call it Hip the Listener. And this is where we have you, the guest, hip the listeners to anything, whether it be music, art, events, movies, documentaries, whatever you want. Hip the listener.
Hip the listener, for one, to my solo exhibition, Year of the Flood, White History Month, Volume 1 and 2, that are, it's open at Enamdi Gallery, 54 East 4th Street, like on Forest and Woodward.
Right.
And it opened up last Friday, but it will be open to June 19th. And so Tuesday through Saturdays, 11:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., I believe, are the hours. And so it's free, open to the public, just in case you can call and make a reservation to go see it. But if you come, please just wear a mask and enjoy the show. Yeah, and check it out. Post, tech, all that good stuff. Tag me, all that good stuff. Like in there and go check that out.
We're going to put that on this
else?
page.
Yeah.
Let me see. What else can I hip you to? Check out on Spotify. There's playlists to that show, White History Month, Volume 1, 2. To that. And so, I have 3 playlists, like because I have like a series of like hip hop, tribute to hip hop artists there. So there's a list with all women MCs. There's a list with all guy MCs. And then there's like a co-ed list of like younger sort of like MCs and like younger people that was made by my studio assistant. Sorry, James.
Oh, you're fine.
So, we got accompanying playlists to the show. And then I made a declaration. I was like, some people do it already, and put playlists. So I was like, for now on, all Detroit art shows should come with a playlist for the people. There we go.
Dope.
I was just about to say, you pop in your earbuds and you walk around, listen to the playlist.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, see, that's that. Let me see what else to hip you to. I'm reading this comic book called Philadelphia.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's awesome. That already sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah, Philadelphia. And it is about vampires in Philadelphia. It's like a Black vampire detective story to where John Adams was a vampire and he's leading like a vampire coven in Philadelphia, and this Black detective is trying to figure it out. It's nuts. Yeah.
Is it like serious, or is there like a comedic aspect to it?
No,
it's serious.
it is serious.
Man,
like,
that's awesome.
Like somehow they linked, like that's what I found interesting. Like they linked historically something that happened to John Adams to where he could have gotten turned into a vampire at some point. And he's been in Philadelphia like all this time making like a cup. Yeah. Yeah, like it's interesting. It's interesting. Like yeah. Like
That's awesome.
I've been meaning to get into comics. I'm about to read this
That
as a
sounds
first
so cool.
comic.
Yeah, Philadelphia. I'm telling you, it's it's pretty
Sweet.
cool. It's pretty
That's
cool.
awesome.
Let me see. So let me see. Philadelphia, hip you to that. Let me see, what else are we hipping to? SZA, and it's by this artist by Rodney Barnes. So just Philadelphia. SZA just dropped a new video.
She did. She did.
Yeah, that was cool. Trying to think anything else. Are there any movies that I like? You guys watch WandaVision?
Well, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I haven't seen it.
It's on Disney Plus. WandaVision, about Wanda and Vision from the Avengers. And it's a TV show. So that just ended. So if you haven't watched WandaVision, I write movie reviews and TV show reviews on like my social media stuff. So I'm not going to give a review here, but I'll say check it out. It's pretty interesting. Let me see what else to hip you to. There's a restaurant in Midtown called Detroit Masala, this Indian food restaurant. I'm sorry, it's on 3rd Street. I love it. Oh, man. Because I've been doing this vegetarian thing. And so I've been looking for like different alternatives. And they just have like really, really great food. So,
dope.
Yeah.
I'm going to hip you because we live out in West Bloomfield.
Yeah.
There's a whole strip of Indian places right on Orchard Lake.
In Farmington Hills.
So I'll just name off a few if you want to come out here. Krishna Catering, Saffron, Gift of India.
India Flavors.
Yeah. You will. Whoo! I'm telling you.
There's a large like Indian community in Farmington Hills, and like I know a bunch of people from that area, and they're all like, yeah, these places are like.
Is it by OCC out there on Orchard Lake Road?
Yes. So OCC is right on the other side of the freeway. So when you get off on Orchard Lake, you're gonna turn right.
Okay.
And then you're just gonna keep going down 13 Mile.
Yeah.
Past like the Jewish, the Holocaust Museum.
Yes,
past that,
literally right in that area, like right in that like mile strip.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're gonna move on to your rapid fire questions. Bam, bam, bam. Bam, bam.
Okay.
First one: favorite art shows in Detroit area.
Favorite art that I've gone to or that are up now.
A mix of both.
Favorite art show that I have gone to in the Detroit area. My friend Torres Barnes, he had an art show at I think Hatch in Hamtramck like 3 years ago, and thought like where it was just a bunch of these like paintings and sculptures of different people who had kind of been slain by police, like, and different sort of like Black archetypes, like James Baldwin, Malcolm X. And it's just beautiful, just an amazing painting show. I thought it was one of the best shows. He's one of my favorite painters. So that was still too, just like one of the best shows that I'd seen, like I would say like in the city that I just absolutely loved. Let's see who else. My friend Rashawn Rucker, same thing. He had a show at M Contemporary, just drawing of birds, and me and my significant other actually bought one of his pieces like there, but like just amazing draftsman. Like it was amazing to see that show and just the breadth of work that he did. So and then his traveling shows, I really loved when 30 Americans came to the DIA. Like I went there multiple times just to see 30 Black artists who, from around the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from in America, but like who are major artists in the art world.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Top 3 artists.
Kara Walker, Jenny Saville, and Vincent Desideria.
Top 3 authors.
Neil Gaiman, Chuck Palahniuk, and Fran Lebowitz.
Favorite color?
Red.
Favorite medium to paint on?
Favorite medium to paint on or with?
Ooh,
If it's with oil, and I paint on canvas. So that answers either one of those questions.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
If you had a billboard anywhere in the world, where would it be and what would it say?
If I had a billboard anywhere in the world, what would it be and what would it say? Maybe directly in front of in Congress, in the actual room, like where the Senate has to meet. And this is to say, make good choices.
That's awesome. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to leave with the audience?
Anything I want to leave with the audience. Despite how tumultuous the society we live in right now, man, be kind to each other. You know, like before you really get ready to go in on somebody or judge or cancel, think about your own actions first. Seriously. Like, and I find if more people did that, took an honest inventory of who they were, they wouldn't be so quick to be that critical of like other people. And not saying that people's critiques aren't valid, but I mean, we're all a mess. So like, you know,
right.
we all got to kind of help clean this up together. So yeah, be kind to each other, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, this has been awesome. We really appreciate you being on the podcast. You're a wonderful guest, and
yes,
we definitely are gonna go to see your show and hope to see more of your work. Where can people find you? Online or
people can find you can find me online. So Tylonn, TYLONN dash or dot Tylonn J Sawyer, literally everywhere. Facebook, Instagram. I have a Twitter, but I don't use it. So if you ever sent me a message on Twitter, I'm probably never gonna ever like get back to you because I just don't use Twitter. But I primarily use Instagram, Facebook, even my website, Tylonn J Sawyer. So like if you do that at literally like that's where everything is. And so yeah, guys, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, Tylonn, it was an absolute honor. We really appreciate it, and we hope you have a good rest of your day, man.
Yeah, and this was great, man. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
appreciate
no problem.
You both.
Yeah.
Documenting history, man.
Yeah.
Hey, amen.
You take care.
Yeah, have a good rest
All
of your
right,
day.
take care. Take it easy.
Thank you so much for listening, guys.
Check out our social media: Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts.
And also make sure to like, share, and subscribe to all of our social medias. And we'll see you later.